The alarm clock screamed at 5:45 a.m., and Maya Chen slapped it silent with more force than necessary. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep, but she couldn't afford to be tired today. Not today. After 6 months of job hunting, countless rejections, and watching her savings evaporate like water in the desert, she finally had a real job. A good job, the kind that came with benefits and a salary that meant she wouldn't have to choose between her daughter's medicine and groceries anymore. She stumbled to the bathroom, careful not to wake her 2 girls sleeping in the tiny bedroom they all shared. The apartment was quiet except for the distant sound of traffic and someone's television bleeding through the paper-thin walls. Maya splashed cold water on her face and stared at her reflection. Dark circles under her eyes, a few gray hairs she didn't remember having last month, and worry lines that made her look older than 32. When did she start looking so worn down? "You can do this," she whispered to her reflection. "It's just a job. You've worked before. You're good at what you do." But it had been so long, and this wasn't just any job. This was Meridian Tech Solutions, one of the biggest software companies in the city. She'd be working as an executive assistant to the CEO himself. When they'd called with the offer, she'd actually asked them to repeat it twice because she couldn't believe someone like her had gotten it. Maya pulled on the blazer she'd found at a thrift store last week. It was slightly too big, but it looked professional enough. Navy blue, no stains, only one button missing on the sleeve that nobody would notice. She paired it with her best black pants and the shoes she reserved for interviews and important occasions. Looking at herself in the mirror, she almost looked like she belonged in a corporate office. Almost. In the kitchen, she made coffee in the ancient pot that took forever to brew and packed her lunch. A sandwich, an apple, some crackers. Nothing fancy, but it would do. She'd learned to stretch every dollar until it screamed. The girls needed new winter coats, and her youngest, Sophie, had that doctor's appointment next month that the insurance might not fully cover. "Mommy?" A small voice came from the bedroom doorway. Maya turned to see her 7-year-old daughter Rebecca rubbing her eyes and clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Hey, baby." "Did I wake you?" "Are you leaving already?" Rebecca's lower lip trembled slightly. Maya's heart twisted. She knelt down and pulled her daughter into a hug. "I have to get to my new job, remember? Mrs. Patterson from downstairs will take you and Sophie to school. And I'll be home for dinner, I promise. What if you don't come back?" Rebecca's voice was so small it barely registered. "What?" "Honey, of course I'm coming back." "Why would you think that?" Rebecca shrugged against her shoulder. "Daddy didn't." Maya closed her eyes and held her daughter tighter. 2 years since David left, and the girls still carried that fear. Every time Maya walked out the door, they wondered if she'd disappear too. "I'm not Daddy, sweetheart. I will always come back to you. Always. You're my whole world. You and Sophie." She kissed Rebecca's forehead and tucked her back into bed, waiting until her daughter's breathing evened out before slipping out of the apartment. In the hallway, she paused to knock on Mrs. Patterson's door. The elderly woman answered in her bathrobe, and Maya handed her $30, feeling guilty it wasn't more. "You're too generous, dear," Mrs. Patterson said, but she took the money. They both knew she needed it. "Thank you for helping me. I don't know what I'd do without you." Outside, the morning air was crisp and cold. Maya checked her phone. The Uber she'd requested should be here any minute. She'd agonized over spending the money on a ride instead of taking 2 buses, but she couldn't risk being late on her first day. The app showed her driver was close, a black Mercedes according to the car details. A sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the curb, and Maya practically ran to it. Finally, something going right. She yanked open the back door and slid in, immediately overwhelmed by the smell of expensive leather and cologne. "Oh, thank God you're here," she said, breathless. "I am so sorry, I know I'm cutting it close. Can you please hurry to Meridian Tech Solutions on 5th Avenue? It's my first day and I really cannot be late." The man in the driver's seat turned to look at her, and Maya's brain registered several things at once. He was younger than she expected, maybe late 30s. Dressed in an expensive charcoal suit that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. Dark hair styled perfectly, strong jawline, and eyes that held an expression she couldn't quite read. Confusion? Amusement? Before he could speak, her phone rang. Mrs. Patterson's name flashed on the screen. "I'm so sorry, I have to take this," Maya said, pressing the phone to her ear. "Hello? Maya, dear, I'm so sorry to bother you, but Rebecca just reminded me that Sophie's lunchbox is still in your refrigerator." "Should I? Oh, no. Maya pressed her free hand to her forehead. Sophie would be devastated without her lunch. Can you grab it? There's leftover pasta in there and some grapes. And make sure to pack her inhaler, it should be on the counter. She needs it at school because of her asthma and… The car started moving and Maya noticed the driver wasn't saying anything, just smoothly pulling into traffic. Good. At least he was professional. She tried to keep her voice down as she gave Mrs. Patterson detailed instructions about Sophie's lunch and medication, her morning routine, and what to do if she had any breathing problems at school. When she finally hung up, Maya slumped back in the seat, suddenly exhausted, and the day hadn't even started. She caught the driver's eyes in the rearview mirror. He was watching her with an expression that looked almost kind. Sorry about that, she said. My youngest has asthma and mornings are always chaos. Single mom life, you know? She laughed, but it sounded hollow even to her own ears. Don't apologize, he said, and his voice was deeper than she expected, smooth and cultured. British accent, maybe? You're handling a lot. Something about his tone made her throat tight. When was the last time someone had said something supportive without judgment? Yeah, well, I'm trying. This new job is going to help so much. I mean, if I don't mess it up on day one by being late. She checked her watch. We've got about 12 minutes. Think we can make it? I'll do my best, he said, and she could swear she heard amusement in his voice. As they wove through morning traffic, Maya found herself talking. She couldn't help it. Nerves always made her chatty, and there was something about this driver's calm presence that made the words spill out. I've been out of work for 6 months, she heard herself say. 6 months. Do you know how long that is when you've got 2 kids depending on you? I was working as an assistant at a marketing firm before they had layoffs. I applied to probably 100 jobs. 100. Most didn't even bother to reject me, they just ghosted, like I wasn't even worth a form email. The driver navigated around a slow-moving truck. That must have been difficult. Difficult doesn't even begin to cover it. Maya stared out the window at the city rushing past. I had to borrow money from my sister, who barely has enough herself. I sold my car last week because I couldn't afford the repairs. My landlord keeps threatening to raise the rent, which would be hilarious if it wasn't terrifying because I can barely afford what I'm paying now. She realized she was oversharing with a complete stranger and felt her cheeks heat. Sorry. You probably hear sob stories from passengers all day. I'm just nervous. I'm going to be working directly under the new CEO, which is amazing and terrifying at the same time. I've never even met the guy. What if he's some corporate jerk who treats assistants like furniture? In the mirror, she saw something flicker across the driver's face. Was that a smile? What if he's not? He asked. That would be nice, Maya admitted. I just need this to work out. For my girls. They deserve stability, you know? They deserve a mom who's not constantly stressed about money and can actually take them places and buy them things without checking her bank account first. They're lucky to have a mother who cares so much. Maya felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back hard. I don't know about that. I'm just trying not to screw up too badly. They were getting close now. Maya could see the Meridian Tech building rising up ahead, all glass and steel and intimidation. Her stomach churned. You'll be fine, the driver said, and something in his certainty made her almost believe it. He pulled up to the front entrance with 3 minutes to spare. Maya grabbed her bag and practically lunged for her purse. Thank you so much. You really saved me today. She pulled out a crumpled $10 bill, the last of her cash until payday. Here, for the tip. I know it's not much, but… No. The driver's voice was firm but gentle. He turned to look at her fully for the first time, and Maya was struck by his eyes. They were kind. Really genuinely kind. Keep your money. Consider it a good luck gesture for your first day. I can't do that. You drove me here, you deserve… I insist, go. You've got 2 minutes and you don't want to be late. Maya clutched her $10, feeling something uncomfortable in her chest. Gratitude mixed with pride, mixed with the weird sensation of being seen as a person, instead of just a fare. Thank you, really, you have no idea how much this means. She climbed out of the car and stood on the sidewalk, taking a deep breath. The building loomed above her, all gleaming windows reflecting the morning sun. Somewhere up there, her new life was waiting. A life where she could provide for her girls, where she didn't have to choose between rent and food, where maybe she could breathe a little easier. Maya turned back to wave at the kind Uber driver, but the Mercedes was already pulling away, disappearing into the morning traffic. She watched it go, feeling oddly emotional about a stranger's small kindness. Maybe that was a good sign. Maybe this was the universe telling her that things were going to get better. She squared her shoulders, adjusted her too big blazer, and walked through the glass doors into the gleaming lobby of Meridian Tech Solutions. Her heels clicked on the marble floor as she headed for the elevators, her heart pounding with equal parts terror and hope. 22nd floor. Executive suite. Her new beginning. Maya pressed the elevator button and watched the numbers climb, each one bringing her closer to her future. She had no idea that the kind driver in the Mercedes wasn't just a random stranger. She had no idea that in about 10 minutes her life was about to get a whole lot more complicated. But for now, in this moment, she just felt grateful. Grateful for small kindnesses from strangers. Grateful for this opportunity. And grateful that maybe, just maybe, her luck was finally starting to change. The elevator doors opened on the 22nd floor, and Maya stepped out into a world that felt completely alien. Everything was sleek and modern, from the polished floors to the minimalist art on the walls. Even the air smelled expensive somehow, like coffee that cost more than her weekly grocery budget, and some kind of subtle fragrance she couldn't identify. A woman in her 50s with perfectly styled gray hair and a sharp pantsuit approached with a warm smile. "You must be Maya Chen. I'm Margaret Williams, head of HR. Welcome to Meridian Tech." Maya shook her hand, hoping her palm wasn't too sweaty. "Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really excited to be here. We're thrilled to have you. Your references were exceptional, and we need someone with your organizational skills." Margaret gestured for Maya to follow her down a hallway lined with glass-walled offices. "I'll give you a quick tour, show you your workspace, and then Mr. Hunt should be arriving shortly for the morning briefing." Mr. Hunt, the CEO, the man whose schedule she'd be managing, whose coffee she'd probably be fetching, whose entire professional life would somehow become her responsibility. Maya's stomach did a nervous flip. Margaret walked her through the executive suite, pointing out the conference rooms, the break area that looked like something from a magazine, and finally, a desk positioned right outside a large corner office. "This is you," Margaret said, patting the desk. "You'll be Mr. Hunt's right hand, essentially, managing his calendar, coordinating with department heads, handling correspondence, preparing briefing materials. It's a demanding role, but I have a feeling you're up for it." Maya looked at the desk. The computer monitor that was bigger than her television at home, the ergonomic chair, the view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. It felt surreal. "I won't let you down," she said quietly. "I know you won't." Margaret checked her watch. "I need to run to a meeting, but make yourself comfortable. Log into your computer with these credentials and you'll find your orientation materials in your email. Mr. Hunt should be here within the hour. He's very punctual, so when he arrives, just introduce yourself and he'll walk you through his expectations." After Margaret left, Maya sank into her chair and took a moment to just breathe. She'd made it. She was actually here. She logged into the computer and started reading through the orientation documents, trying to absorb information about company policies, security protocols, and her benefits package, real health insurance for her and the girls. The thought made her want to cry with relief. She was so absorbed in reading about the dental plan that she didn't hear the footsteps approaching until they were right beside her desk. "Good morning." Maya looked up, and her entire world tilted sideways. Standing in front of her desk, holding a leather briefcase and wearing the same charcoal suit from this morning, was her Uber driver. Except he wasn't her Uber driver. He couldn't be, because Margaret had said Mr. Hunt would be here soon, and this man was looking at her with those same kind eyes, except now they held something else. Recognition. And definitely amusement. "You must be Maya Chen. My new executive assistant." The words hit her like cold water. "My new executive assistant, Mr. Hunt, the CEO, the man she just spent 15 minutes pouring her heart out to, telling him about her financial struggles, her difficult life, her fears about working for some corporate jerk who treated assistants like furniture. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God." Maya's face went from normal to hot to absolutely burning in about 3 seconds flat. She stood up so fast she nearly knocked her chair over and words started tumbling out of her mouth like a dam had burst. "Mr. Hunt, I'm so sorry. I thought you were my Uber driver. I didn't mean to just jump in your car like that and then talk your ear off about my personal problems." That was so unprofessional and inappropriate, and I completely understand if you want to fire me before I even start, because who does that? Who mistakes their new boss for a rideshare driver and then proceeds to tell them their entire life story? She was rambling and she knew it, but she couldn't seem to stop. Her career was over. Her one shot at stability, gone because she couldn't keep her mouth shut in a car. But Alexander Hunt, CEO of Meridian Tech Solutions, just stood there with the slightest smile playing at the corners of his mouth. When she finally ran out of words and breath, he spoke calmly. No need to apologize. I enjoyed our conversation this morning. He paused, and that small smile grew just a bit. Though I probably should have corrected your assumption about being your driver. That was unprofessional of me. Maya blinked. Was he taking responsibility? But I just assumed and jumped in your car without even checking, and I chose to drive you here instead of correcting you. I was curious, I suppose, and you seemed stressed enough without adding embarrassment to the mix. He shifted his briefcase to his other hand. Shall we discuss today's agenda? I have a board meeting at 10, lunch with the CFO at noon, and a video conference with our Singapore office at 3. I'll need briefing materials for all of them. Maya's brain struggled to catch up. He wasn't firing her. He was actually acting like this morning hadn't been completely mortifying. Yes, of course. I'll get right on that. Excellent. My coffee preferences are in the file Margaret sent you. I take it black, no sugar. And Maya? He paused at the door to his office. Breathe. You're going to be fine. Then he disappeared into his office, leaving Maya standing at her desk, her heart pounding, her face still hot, wondering what on earth had just happened. The morning passed in a blur of activity. Maya threw herself into work with an intensity born of equal parts determination and lingering embarrassment. She prepared briefing materials for the board meeting, learning the company's financial reports faster than she'd ever learned anything in her life. She coordinated with 3 different department heads, fielded phone calls, and managed to figure out the complex coffee machine in the break room to make Alexander's coffee exactly how he liked it. When she brought it to his office, he looked up from his laptop and nodded his thanks. The briefing materials were excellent, by the way. Very thorough. Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Alexander is fine when it's just us. Mr. Hunt makes me feel ancient. Maya felt something relax slightly in her chest. Alexander, then. Throughout the day, she caught glimpses of him in action. He was different than she'd expected. Not the cold, distant executive she'd feared, but someone who actually listened when people talked. During a tense phone call she could hear through the door, he was firm but fair. When a junior employee accidentally spilled coffee in the hallway outside his office, he'd helped clean it up instead of acting annoyed. By the time the Singapore video conference rolled around, Maya had found her rhythm. She'd taken notes all day about how he worked, what he needed, how he liked things organized. When she brought him the conference materials 15 minutes early, he looked genuinely impressed. You're very good at this, he said. I'm motivated, Maya replied honestly. After the conference ended, most of the office had already emptied out for the evening. Maya was organizing files on her computer when Alexander emerged from his office, loosening his tie slightly. You should go home, he said. Your daughters are probably wondering where you are. The fact that he remembered she had daughters, that he'd actually listened this morning, made Maya's throat tight. I just want to finish setting up my filing system. Make sure I'm ready for tomorrow. Maya, his voice was gentle. Go home. Tomorrow we'll still be here. She saved her work and shut down her computer, gathering her things. As she stood, Alexander walked over to her desk. He seemed to hesitate for a moment, then spoke. I meant what I said this morning in the car. Your daughters are lucky to have you. Maya felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back hard. She would not cry in front of her boss on her first day. Thank you. And thank you for not firing me for the Uber incident. The Uber incident, Alexander repeated, and this time he actually smiled. A real smile that reached his eyes and made him look younger, more human. Is that what we're calling it? It sounds better than the time I mistook my CEO for a rideshare driver and traumatized him with my personal problems. He laughed, an actual genuine laugh that surprised them both. You didn't traumatize me. If anything, it was refreshing. People are usually so carefully polished around me. It was nice to have a real conversation. They stood there for a moment, and Maya felt something shift. Not anything inappropriate, just a recognition that maybe this job, this person, might be different than she'd expected. I should go. she said finally. My neighbor is watching the girls and I don't want to take advantage. Of course. Have a good evening, Maya. You too, Alexander. On the elevator down, Maya let herself lean against the wall, suddenly exhausted. But it was a good exhausted, the kind that came from working hard and doing well. She'd survived her first day. More than survived, actually. She'd done good work and her boss had noticed. The lobby was quiet now, most of the day shift gone. Maya pushed through the glass doors into the evening air and pulled out her phone to request an Uber home. A real one this time. As she waited, she thought about the morning, about the kind stranger in the Mercedes who'd turned out to be anything but a stranger, about the way he'd driven her here, listened to her panic, refused her tip, about the way he'd handled her embarrassment with grace instead of making her feel worse. Her phone buzzed. Her ride was still 7 minutes away. Maya watched the city move around her, people hurrying home, cars honking, the smell of street food from a vendor on the corner. The same city as this morning, but somehow everything felt different. A black Mercedes pulled up to the curb, and for one wild second, Maya's heart jumped. But a different man was driving, someone older, and she climbed in the back with a strange mix of disappointment and relief. Heading home? The driver asked pleasantly. Yeah, Maya said, giving him her address. Heading home. As they pulled into traffic, she looked back at the Meridian Tech building, lit up against the darkening sky. Somewhere up there on the 22nd floor, Alexander Hunt was probably still working. Her boss, her new beginning. The man who'd shown her kindness when he didn't have to. Who'd given her a chance when she desperately needed one. Maya smiled to herself and pulled out her phone to text Mrs. Patterson that she was on her way home. Her first day had been nothing like she'd expected, but maybe, just maybe, that was okay. Maybe the unexpected was exactly what she needed. 3 weeks passed in what felt like both a blur and an eternity. Maya fell into a rhythm at Meridian Tech, arriving early and often staying late, determined to prove she deserved this opportunity. She learned Alexander's preferences, his working style, the way he liked his meetings structured. She anticipated his needs before he asked, managed crises with calm efficiency, and somehow made the impossible scheduling conflicts work out. How do you do that? Jennifer from accounting asked one afternoon, watching Maya coordinate a meeting between 5 executives who all claimed to have no available time. You're like a magician. Maya laughed, but the truth was simpler and sadder than magic. She was terrified of losing this job. Every day felt like a test she couldn't afford to fail. So she worked harder, stayed later, and pushed herself past exhaustion because the alternative was going back to that desperate place where she'd been 6 months ago. Alexander noticed. Of course he noticed. He'd started asking her questions in their morning briefings that had nothing to do with work. How were her daughters? How was Sophie's asthma? Had Rebecca adjusted to the new school schedule? And Maya found herself answering honestly. Found herself looking forward to those few minutes where they talked like actual people instead of boss and employee. Rebecca drew a picture of you yesterday, Maya mentioned one morning while reviewing his calendar. The words slipped out before she could stop them, and she immediately felt her cheeks heat. Sorry, that's not professional. You don't need to hear about my kid's artwork. I'd like to see it, Alexander said, looking up from his laptop. If you don't mind sharing. Maya hesitated, then pulled out her phone and showed him the picture. It was crude the way 7-year-old art always was, but Rebecca had drawn their apartment. And in the window, she'd drawn Maya at what was clearly meant to be a desk. At the top, in wobbly letters, she'd written, Mommy at her important job. Alexander studied the picture for a long moment. She's proud of you. She drew you too, Maya said, pointing to a stick figure next to her desk. She said you're the nice man who helped us. Something flickered across Alexander's face, an expression Maya couldn't quite read. I didn't do much. You did more than you know. The moment stretched between them, something unspoken but tangible, before Alexander cleared his throat and returned to the calendar. So the board meeting at 2. But things were getting harder at home and Maya couldn't hide it forever. Her babysitter had quit suddenly, leaving Maya scrambling to find childcare. The new person charged more, money Maya didn't really have but couldn't refuse to spend. Then her landlord had served notice that rent would increase by $200 next month. $200 that might as well have been $2,000 for how impossible it seemed. Maya started bringing lunch from home, eating instant noodles at her desk. She stopped buying coffee from the shop downstairs, making do with the free break room coffee that tasted like dishwater. She stayed later at the office partly because she needed to work, but partly because the office was warm and well lit, and she didn't have to think about the bills piling up on her kitchen counter. One Thursday evening, Maya was still at her desk at 9 o'clock. The office dark and empty except for Alexander's office light still glowing. She was staring at her bank account on her phone, doing the math for the 100th time, trying to figure out how to make the numbers work. They didn't work. They wouldn't work. No matter how she calculated it, she was going to come up short. Sophie needed new medication, the expensive kind that insurance only partially covered. Rebecca needed new shoes because she'd grown out of hers and was getting blisters. The car Maya had sold still wasn't paid off, and the loan company kept calling. And now the rent increase and the more expensive babysitter, and the heating bill that would only get worse as winter approached. Maya felt the tears coming and couldn't stop them. She put her head down on her desk, shoulders shaking with silent sobs, trying to be quiet because she didn't want anyone to hear her falling apart. Maya, she jerked upright, swiping frantically at her tears. Alexander stood a few feet away, concern written across his face. He must have come out of his office without her hearing him. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, her voice thick. "I was just leaving. I'll have those reports ready first thing tomorrow. It's 9 at night. The reports can wait?" Alexander moved closer, then seemed to think better of it and leaned against the edge of her desk instead. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I'm fine. You're crying at your desk at 9 p.m. That's not fine." Maya laughed, but it came out bitter and broken. "Just life, you know? It's nothing I can't handle." Alexander was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was gentle. "I'm not going to pretend I know what you're going through, but I do know that you've been here until late every night this week. I know you're eating instant noodles for lunch, and I know something is weighing on you." He paused. "You don't have to tell me, but if there's a way I can help," and maybe it was the exhaustion, or the fear, or just the fact that someone was actually asking, but Maya felt the story pour out. The babysitter quitting, the rent increase, Sophie's medication, the car loan that wouldn't go away, the constant calculation of how to stretch every dollar, the weight of being the only thing standing between her daughters and disaster. "I can't afford to mess this up," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This job is everything. If I lose it, if I can't perform well enough, if I'm not good enough..." She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. "Maya, look at me." Alexander waited until she met his eyes. "You're not going to lose this job. You're one of the best assistants I've ever had. You're organized, efficient, and you anticipate needs before they arise. That's not going to change because you're dealing with financial stress. But what if? No what ifs. Your family comes first, always. If you need to leave early for your daughters, do it. If you need to work from home sometimes, we'll make it work. This job is important, but it's not more important than your children." Maya felt fresh tears spill over, but these were different. Not despair, but something closer to relief mixed with disbelief that someone actually understood. Alexander stood and walked to his office, returning a moment later with a tissue box and what looked like some kind of folder. He set the tissue box on her desk and hesitated with the folder. "I probably shouldn't do this," he said, more to himself than to her, "but I'm going to anyway." He placed the folder in front of her. "This is information about the company's employee assistance program. It's designed for exactly this kind of situation. Emergency loans, financial counseling, that sort of thing. It's confidential. It doesn't affect your employment status, and you've earned it. Please at least look at it." Maya stared at the folder like it might disappear if she blinked. "And before you argue," Alexander continued, "this isn't charity. This is a company benefit that exists because situations like yours are exactly what it was created for. You work hard, you deserve support when you need it. I don't know what to say. Say you'll apply. Say you'll stop trying to carry everything alone." He grabbed his jacket from his office. "And say you'll go home now because it's late and your daughters probably miss you." The next morning, Maya arrived at work to find an envelope on her desk. Inside was a handwritten note on Alexander's personal stationery. "I meant what I said last night. You're not alone in this. Also, HR approved your application to the assistance program this morning. They'll call you later today to discuss details. Please don't argue with me about this. Consider it an investment in keeping my best assistant happy and healthy. Amaya had to sit down, her legs suddenly weak. He'd already pushed her application through. Had probably called HR himself first thing this morning. She didn't know whether to be grateful or mortified or both. That afternoon, she met with someone from HR who explained the program. An interest-free loan to help with immediate expenses, resources for financial planning, and access to other support services. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to cover Sophie's medication, the rent increase for a few months, and give Maya breathing room to actually save money. Mr. Hunt put in a strong recommendation, the HR person mentioned. He said you were an invaluable employee dealing with temporary hardship. That went a long way. When Maya returned to her desk, Alexander was in a meeting. She wanted to thank him, to somehow express what this meant, but the words felt inadequate. How do you thank someone for seeing you as a person, instead of just an employee? For understanding that sometimes life overwhelms you and you need help, and that needing help doesn't make you weak? She left a note on his desk. Thank you. For everything. You have no idea what this means to my family. His response came during his afternoon break, delivered verbally as he passed her desk on his way back from a meeting. Just doing what's right. That's all. But it wasn't all. Maya knew that. Most bosses wouldn't have noticed her struggling. Most wouldn't have cared. Most certainly wouldn't have personally intervened to help an employee they'd known for less than a month. Over the next week, something shifted between them. The professional boundaries remained, but there was a warmth now and understanding. Alexander asked about her daughters more often, and Maya found herself sharing stories about Rebecca's school play and Sophie's latest obsession with butterflies. He told her about his own childhood, growing up in a wealthy family but feeling disconnected from them, never quite fitting into their world of corporate expectations and social climbing. Is that why you came here? Maya asked one afternoon while preparing briefing materials. To get away from them? Partly, Alexander admitted, and partly because I wanted to build something different. A company that actually values its people, that doesn't just see employees as numbers on a spreadsheet. Maya smiled. You're doing a good job of that. Thanks to people like you who remind me why it matters. Jennifer from accounting noticed the change too. You and Mr. Hunt seem to work really well together, she mentioned one day in the break room. It's nice to see. The last assistant barely lasted 3 months because she couldn't keep up with him. He's a good boss, Maya said simply, not quite meeting Jennifer's eyes because she didn't want anyone to see whatever was written on her face. Because something was happening, something Maya didn't quite want to name. It wasn't romantic exactly, or maybe it was the beginning of something that could be romantic, but neither of them was acknowledging it. It was just this growing connection, this sense that they understood each other in a way that went beyond professional courtesy. Alexander had seen her at her lowest and hadn't turned away. He'd helped without making her feel small. He'd treated her with dignity when she felt like she had none left, and Maya had seen past the CEO title to the man underneath. Someone who was kind, who listened, who genuinely cared about making things better for people. Someone who carried his own loneliness, his own struggles with family expectations and trying to be true to himself in a world that often demanded conformity. Friday evening, as Maya was preparing to leave, Alexander stopped by her desk. My sister is having a charity gala tomorrow night, he said, sounding reluctant. I'm required to attend. It's going to be boring and full of people I don't particularly like. He hesitated. Would you be willing to attend as my +1? Purely professional, of course. I could use someone there who I can actually have a real conversation with. Maya's heart did something complicated in her chest. I don't have anything to wear to a gala. The company has a discretionary fund for exactly these situations. Consider it part of the job. It should have felt transactional, but somehow it didn't. It felt like Alexander asking for her company because he valued it, because he trusted her. Okay, Maya heard herself say. Yes, I'll go. Alexander's smile was worth whatever awkwardness the gala might bring. Thank you. You're saving me from an evening of mindless small talk and fake smiles. As Maya rode the bus home that evening, watching the city lights blur past, she thought about how much had changed in 3 weeks. She had stability, she had help, she had a boss who actually cared, she had hope again, but she also had something more complicated growing in her chest, something that made her think about Alexander's smile and the way he listened when she talked. Something that probably shouldn't be there but was anyway, quiet and persistent and impossible to ignore. The dress arrived at Maya's apartment on Saturday morning, delivered in an elegant garment bag with the logo of an expensive boutique she'd only ever walked past. Inside was a deep blue gown, simple but elegant, with a note in Alexander's handwriting. Thought this color would suit you. See you at 7. Maya held the dress up against herself in the mirror, and for a moment she barely recognized the woman staring back. When had she last worn something this beautiful? When had she last gone anywhere that required a dress like this? "Mommy, you look like a princess," Sophie squealed from the doorway, Rebecca right behind her with wide eyes. "I'm going to a fancy party with Mr. Alexander tonight," Maya explained, feeling oddly nervous about saying it out loud. "Mrs. Patterson will be here with you." "Is Mr. Alexander your boyfriend?" Rebecca asked with the blunt curiosity of a 7-year-old. "No, sweetie. He's my boss. This is for work." But as Maya got ready that evening, carefully applying the makeup she rarely wore, styling her hair in a way that felt special, she couldn't quite convince herself it was just work. There was something else happening here. Something neither of them was saying, but both of them felt. Alexander's car pulled up at exactly 7. Not the Mercedes from that first morning, but a sleek black town car with a driver. Maya kissed her daughters goodbye, promising to tell them all about the fancy party tomorrow, and headed downstairs. Alexander stood beside the car, and Maya's breath caught. She'd seen him in expensive suits every day for weeks, but this was different. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a movie. But it was his expression when he saw her that made her heart stutter. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise mixed with what looked like admiration. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. "The dress is beautiful," Maya corrected, smoothing down the fabric nervously. "I meant what I said." He opened the car door for her. "Thank you again for doing this. I know spending your Saturday evening at a stuffy charity event wasn't in your job description." As they drove through the city toward the upscale hotel hosting the gala, Alexander briefed her on what to expect. His sister Victoria was hosting to raise money for some arts foundation. There would be silent auctions, speeches, and a lot of wealthy people writing checks to feel good about themselves. "You don't sound enthusiastic about your own sister's event," Maya observed. "Victoria and I have a complicated relationship. She's very much part of the world I've been trying to escape. Appearances matter more than substance, connections matter more than character." He loosened his bow tie slightly. "I love her, but I don't always like the person she becomes in these settings." The hotel ballroom was exactly as fancy as Maya had feared. Crystal chandeliers, women in designer gowns, men in tuxedos, waiters circulating with champagne and tiny food that probably cost more per bite than her weekly groceries. Maya felt completely out of place. Alexander must have sensed her discomfort because he stayed close, his hand occasionally at the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd. He introduced her simply as "my colleague, Maya," and she appreciated that he didn't call her his assistant, didn't diminish her role. They were examining the silent auction items when a woman's voice cut through the ambient chatter. "Alexander, there you are." The woman approaching was stunning in the way that required both money and effort. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, a red dress that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent. She was tall, confident, and the way she looked at Alexander suggested a history between them. "Victoria," Alexander said, his tone noticeably cooler. "Nice event." "Don't patronize me, darling." Victoria's eyes slid to Maya with obvious calculation. "And who is this?" "Maya Chen, my executive assistant." Something in Victoria's expression shifted, became slightly predatory. "How lovely. I'm Victoria Blackwood, Alexander's sister." She extended a perfectly manicured hand, though I suppose I should say his stepsister to be accurate. "Different mothers, you know." Maya shook her hand, feeling like she was being evaluated and found wanting. "Nice to meet you." "An executive assistant," Victoria repeated as if tasting the words. How charming. Alexander always did have a soft spot for charity cases. The words landed like a slap. Maya felt her face heat, but before she could respond, Alexander's voice cut in, sharp as glass. "That's enough, Victoria." "Oh, don't be so sensitive. I'm sure Maya understands it's nothing personal." Victoria smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "It's just that Alexander has a habit of trying to save people. It's very noble, very heroic, but it can be exhausting for those of us who know him well." "Maya isn't a charity case," Alexander said, his jaw tight. She's an exceptional professional who I'm lucky to work with. Of course she is. Victoria patted his arm condescendingly. Well, do enjoy the evening. And Maya, dear, there's a lovely selection of champagne by the bar. You should try some. It's probably nicer than what you're used to. She glided away, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her wake. I'm sorry, Alexander said quietly. Victoria can be difficult. It's fine, Maya said, but it wasn't fine. The words stung because part of her feared they were true. Was that what she was to Alexander? A charity case? Someone he helped because it made him feel good about himself? The evening continued, but the magic had leaked out of it. Maya smiled and made small talk with people whose names she immediately forgot. She watched Alexander work the room with practiced ease, seeing him in this world of wealth and privilege that she could never truly be part of. A man approached her while Alexander was talking to a group of board members. He was older, probably in his 60s, with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. You're Alexander Hunt's date? He asked without preamble. I'm his assistant, Maya corrected. The man's smile took on an unpleasant edge. Of course you are. How modern of him. He looked her up and down in a way that made her skin crawl. Though I must say, if I were hiring assistants who looked like you, my wife would have something to say about it. Maya felt her stomach turn. Excuse me, I need to use the restroom. She escaped to the bathroom, locking herself in a stall and taking deep breaths. What was she doing here? She didn't belong in this world of tuxedos and champagne and people who looked at her like she was either a charity case or something worse. When she emerged, she found Alexander waiting in the hallway, concern etched on his face. Maya, are you all right? Someone said you looked upset. I'm fine. I just need some air. He led her to a balcony overlooking the city, blessedly empty and quiet. The cool night air felt like relief. Was it Victoria? Alexander asked. Or something else? It's everything, Maya admitted. I don't fit here, Alexander. These people look at me and they see someone who doesn't belong. And maybe they're right. They're not right. Your sister called me a charity case. That man in there basically implied I'm sleeping with you to keep my job. And I keep wondering if maybe there's some truth to it. Not the sleeping together part, she added quickly, but the charity part. Did you help me because you felt sorry for me? Am I just another person you're trying to save? Alexander was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was raw in a way she'd never heard before. I helped you because you deserved help, because you're a good person working hard to take care of your family, and the system was failing you. Because when I met you that morning in the car, I saw someone genuine in a world full of people wearing masks. He turned to face her fully. And yes, maybe I wanted to help because I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning. My family has money, but that doesn't mean I haven't struggled. Just different struggles. What kind of struggles? The kind where your father tells you business is the only thing that matters. Where your stepmother hosts parties like this because appearances are everything. Where your sister learns to weaponize her charm and connections instead of actually caring about people. He looked out at the city. I've been surrounded by wealth my entire life and felt completely empty. And then I met someone who had every reason to be bitter and angry. But instead you were just trying to do your best for your kids. That's not a charity case, Maya. That's someone worth knowing. Maya felt something crack open in her chest. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Alexander smiled, tired but genuine. Do you want to leave? We've made an appearance, written a check. We could get out of here. Yes, please. They made their excuses and slipped out while Victoria was busy with a speech. In the car, the tension slowly leaked away, replaced by something easier. I'm sorry the evening was awful, Alexander said. It wasn't all awful. The food was good, and you looked very handsome in that tuxedo. The words slipped out before Maya could stop them, and she felt her face heat, but Alexander just smiled. You really did look beautiful tonight. I meant that. They fell into comfortable silence, watching the city lights slide past. When the car pulled up to Maya's apartment building, Alexander walked her to the door despite her protests that he didn't need to. Thank you for coming with me, he said. I know tonight was difficult, but it meant a lot having you there. Even though your sister hated me? Especially because my sister hated you. It means you're genuine, and she can't manipulate you like she does everyone else. Maya laughed. That's one way to look at it. They stood there in the pool of light from the street lamp, neither quite ready to say goodbye. Maya could see Mrs. Patterson watching from the window upstairs, probably dying of curiosity. I should go, Maya said. My babysitter is probably wondering what happened. Of course. But Alexander didn't move. Maya, I need to tell you something. Her heart started beating faster. Okay. Working with you these past weeks has been the best part of my day. You make me laugh, you challenge me, you remind me why I wanted to do this job in the first place. And tonight, watching you handle Victoria and that horrible man with grace and dignity, I realized something. What? He stepped closer and Maya's breath caught. I realized that somewhere along the way you stopped being just my assistant. You became someone I look forward to seeing, someone whose opinion matters to me, someone I think about when I'm not at work. Alexander, again, I know this is complicated. I know I'm your boss and there are power dynamics and 100 reasons why this is a bad idea. But I needed you to know that what I feel isn't pity or some savior complex. It's genuine. Maya's heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. I think about you too, more than I should. More than is probably appropriate. They stood there in the space between professional and personal, both of them afraid to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Finally, Alexander stepped back. I should let you go. Your daughters are probably still awake wanting to hear about the party. Yeah. They are. Good night, Maya. Good night, Alexander. She watched him walk back to the car, watched it pull away into the night. Then she climbed the stairs to her apartment, where Rebecca and Sophie were indeed still awake, demanding to hear every detail about the fancy party. As she tucked them into bed later, Rebecca asked sleepily, Mommy, do you like Mr. Alexander? Maya thought about his words on the balcony, the way he'd looked at her, the warmth in his voice when he said her name. Yes, sweetie, I do. Does he like you too? Maya smiled in the darkness. I think maybe he does. But as she lay in her own bed later, staring at the ceiling, Maya couldn't shake the worry that had settled in her stomach. What happened now? Where did they go from here? And what would it cost if they tried to turn this growing feeling into something real?